Welcome to the next edition of BriefingsDirect. I'm Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at Inter Arbor Solutions, your host and moderator. When it comes to securing systems and data, the bad guys are constantly upping their games, finding new ways to infiltrate businesses and users. For those protecting systems from these cascading threats, they must be ever vigilant for new technical advances in detection and protection. In effect, they must out-innovate the assailants. Today's BriefingsDirect Security Insights discussion examines the relationship between security and virtualization. We'll now delve into how adaptive companies are finding ways to leverage their virtualization environments to become more resilient, more intelligent, and how they can then protect themselves in new ways. To learn how to ensure that virtualized data centers do not pose risks, but in fact prove more defensible, we're joined by two security-focused executives. Please join me now in welcoming Kurt Romer, the Chief Security Strategist at Citrix. Welcome, Kurt.
Thanks, Dana.
We're also here with Harish Agastya. He's the Vice President for Enterprise Solutions at BitDefender. Welcome, Harish.
Hello, Dana. How you doing?
I'm very well. Kurt, let's start with you. Clearly, virtualization has become widespread and dominant within data centers over the last decade or so. And then at that same period of time, over that same decade, security has risen really to the very top of IT leadership's concerns. What is it about the rise of virtualization and the rise of security? Is there any intersection? Is there any relationship that most people perhaps seem to miss?
Yeah, I would say that the rise of virtualization and security has been concurrent. A lot of original deployments for virtualization technologies were for remote access, but they were also for secure remote access. The apps that people needed to get access to remotely were usually very substantial applications for the organization, things like order processing or partner systems, might have been employee access to email or internal time card systems. So things that you didn't really want an attacker messing with or arbitrary people getting access to. So security has grown from just providing basic access to virtualization to really meeting a lot of the risks of these virtualized applications being exposed to the internet in general, as well as now expanding out into the cloud. So we've had to grow security capabilities to be able to not only keep up with the threat, but try to keep ahead of it as well.
Hasn't it historically been true that most security prevention technologies have been still focused at the operating system level, not so much at the virtualization level? And how has that changed over the past, say, several years?
Yeah, that's a good question. There have been a lot of technologies that are associated with virtualization, and as you go through and secure and harden your virtual environments, you really need to do it from the hardware level, through the hypervisor, through the operating system level, and up into the virtualization system and the applications themselves. And we're seeing people take a much more rigorous approach at each of those layers, hardening the virtualization system and the operating system and integrating in all the familiar security technologies that we're used to, like antivirus, but also going through and providing for application-specific security. So if you've got a SAP system or something else where you need to protect some very sensitive company data and you don't want that data to be accessed outside the office arbitrarily, you can provide very set interfaces into that system, being able to control the clipboard or copy and paste, what peripherals the application can interface with, i.e. turn off the camera, turn off the microphone if it's not needed, and even get down to the level of, with the browser, whether things like JavaScript is enabled or Flash is available. So it helps to harden the overall environment and cut down on a lot of the vulnerabilities that would be inherent by just leaving things completely wide open. So one of the benefits of virtualization is you can get security to be very specific to the application.
Right, right. Harish, now that we're seeing this need for comprehensive security, what is it that people perhaps don't understand that they can do in the virtualization layer, the kernel beneath the OS? Why is virtualization perhaps an uncharted territory, as we seek to get even better security across the board?
Yeah, I think the first thing here is the market. Customers don't often realize when they are dealing with security in physical and virtual environments that the opportunities that virtual environments provide to them have the ability to take security to a higher level than physical. So better than physical is, I think, a key value proposition that they can benefit from, and the technology innovation of today has really enabled that. There was a wave of innovation that we've seen as security vendors in the space operating and focused in on virtualized environments in terms of operational efficiencies. How do we run resource-intensive security workloads in a way that does not compromise the SLAs that IT ops admins need to deliver to with respect to data center production workloads, right? So there's a lot of work happening there in terms of being able to offload security scanning mechanisms onto dedicated security virtual appliances, and BitDefender has been working with partners like Citrix in terms of enabling that. Now the huge opportunity I think that we have is to take that story further in terms of being able to provide higher levels of visibility, detection, and prevention from the attacks of today, advanced persistent threats and how they manifest in the data center, and how if you were in a physical environment, physical server environment versus now in a virtual environment, what you have the opportunity to do and how you can respond. That game is really changing now.
Back to you, Kurt. Is there something about the ability to spin up virtualized environments and then take them down that provides, one, a risk? Is that something that the bad guys, so to speak, can target? Or does that provide, maybe even more so, an opportunity to start fresh, to eliminate vulnerabilities or learn quickly and adapt quickly? Is there something about rapid change that virtualization enables that is perhaps a security plus?
Yeah, Dana, you really hit on the two sides to the coin there. On one side, virtualization does oftentimes provide an image of the application or the applications plus operating system that could be fairly easy for an attacker to steal and be able to spin up offline and be able to get access to secrets. So you want to be able to protect your images to make sure that they're not something that can be easily stolen. On the other side, though, having the ability to define persistence, what do you want to have to persist between reboots versus what's non-persistent, allows you to have a constantly refreshed system. So when you reboot it, it's exactly back to the golden image, and everything is as it should be. And as you patch and update, you're working with a known quantity as opposed to, the endpoint where somebody might have administrative access and is installed personal applications and plugins to their browser and other things like that you may or may not want to have in place. Layering also comes into play there and helps to make sure that you can dynamically layer in applications or components of the operating system depending on what's needed. So if somebody's accessing a certain set of functionality in the office, maybe they've got 100% functionality. But when they go home, because they're not in a trusted environment or maybe working on a trusted PC from their home system, they would get a degraded experience seeing less applications and having less functionality layered into the operating system. So maybe they can't save to local drives or print to local printers. All of that's defined by policy, and the nice thing with virtualization is it's independent of the OS, the applications, the endpoints, and the situations that we all access our apps and data from.
Great. Harish, it sounds like there's a certain level of granularity as to how one can manage their security environment parameters. This is a great thing. Users are often looking for that, particularly in the context of use. Perhaps some people are under a compliance umbrella within an organization. Others might not be. Maybe you could expand a little bit on why having that granular ability to manage parameters is such a strong suit and why virtualization is a great place to make that happen.
Well, great question, Dana. I think that is one of the opportunities and challenges really that security solutions need to be able to cope to. So first of all, I think the agility and the elasticity of solutions in modern-day data centers really require solutions in security to be able to cope with that type of requirement. And many old-world solutions are not really built to be able to serve to that, and it is an opportunity for security practitioners. It's important for them to keep that in scope here, and as one of the key things, criteria you think about when you're looking at solutions for that operate in virtual environments. Now, the other aspect here is also about the topic you just touched on around granularity of controls. As workloads are moving across different subgroups, subnetworks, that VM needs to have a security policy that moves with it depending on what type of application is running in there, not specific to the region or subnetwork that particular VM is resident on. And that is something that security solutions that are designed to operate in virtual environments have the ability to cope to do. Security moves with the workload. As the workload is spawned off, a new VM is created, and the same set of security policies associated with that workload now can protect that workload without having a human need to step in and determine what security posture needs to belong to that VM. That is the opportunity that virtualization provides, but it's also a challenge that maybe previous generation of solutions that predated all of this, when they came about, now they need to really stitch together an approach to try and address that. We love the fact that virtualization is happening, and to this extent, and it's really become this very elastic software-defined mechanism that moves around and gives the IT ops people so much control, gives us an opportunity to be able to sit very well in that environment and provide security that works tightly integrated with the virtualization layer.
Yeah, I hear this so much these days that OT operational people in the IT organization are really looking for more automation, more control, but not chaos control, overview, umbrella level control. So back to you, Kurt. I think it's probably important to understand that when we talk about security within a virtualization layer, that doesn't obviate the value of security that other organizations provide or other technologies provide at the operating system level or network level or all. So this isn't either or. This is an augmentation. Isn't that correct when we talk about virtualization and security?
Yeah, that's correct. Virtualization provides some very unique assets to help extend security. A little bit of what we've already talked about, but some other things that we want to be sure to focus on are some of the new items in terms of virtualization and what's brought to the table. And one of them is hypervisor introspection. It's the ability for the hypervisor to provide a set of direct inspect APIs that allow for inspection of guest memory outside of the guest. So when you look at Windows or Linux guests that are running on a hypervisor, typically when you've tried to secure those, it's been through technology installed in the guest. So you have the guest that's kind of self-protecting, and they're relying on OS APIs to be able to affect security. Sometimes that works really well, and sometimes the attackers get around OS privileges and are successful, even with security solutions in place. You know, one of the things that hypervisor introspection does is it looks for the techniques that would be associated with an attack against the memory of the guest from outside the guest. So it's not relying on the OS APIs and can therefore catch attacks that otherwise would have slipped past those OS-based security functionality.
Harish, maybe you could tell us a little bit about how Citrix and BitDefender are working together and what the news will be at Citrix Synergy.
So we've been working together for the last 4 years, bringing this groundbreaking technology to the market. And so what is the problem we're trying to solve, right, is the issue of advanced attacks that hit the data center when, as Kurt mentioned, advanced attackers are able to skirt past endpoint security defense mechanisms by having root access and operate at the same level of privilege as the endpoint security that may be running within the VM then essentially creating a blind spot where the attacker can do anything they want while the endpoint security solution continues to run. And these types of attacks stay in the environment. The customer has, on average, data shows 200 days before a breach is discovered. The marketplace is filled with stories like this, and it's something that we've been working together with Citrix to try and address. So the fundamental solution leverages the power of the hypervisor to be able to monitor attacks that modify memory. And by looking for all advanced attacks, use the same common attack mechanisms. It's buffer overflow, or it's keep spray, and the list goes on. And they all result in memory modification that the endpoint security solution within the VM is blinded to. However, if you are leveraging the direct inspect APIs that Kurt talked about, available as part of Citrix's Zen server solution, we have the ability to look into that virtual machine without having a footprint in there, completely agentless solution running outside a security virtual appliance that is monitoring all of the VMs in the data center against these types of attacks and is able to take action immediately, reducing the time to detection and blocking the attack. Right, so that is the solution. It's called BitDefender Hypervisor Introspection. It works tightly with Citrix's Zen server hypervisor, and it is something that we have had available in a controlled release form for the last several months. We've had some great customer traction on it. At Citrix Synergy this year, we will be making that solution generally available.
Kurt, what are some of the major benefits for the user organization in deploying something like hypervisor introspection? What's the payback? Why would you do this, not just technically, but in business terms?
Yeah, so hypervisor introspection, which we introduced in Zen Server 7.1, allows an organization to deploy virtualization with security technologies back behind it at the hypervisor level. So what that's doing for the business is it means that every guest you bring up has protection associated with it. Even if it's a new version of Linux you haven't previously tested, you don't really even know what antivirus you would have integrated with it, something that you're working on from an appliance perspective, anything that can run on Zen Server would be protected through these direct inspect APIs and the BitDefender HVI solution. So that's what's really exciting. It also has performance benefits because you don't have to run antivirus in every guest at the same level. Knowing what's being protected at the hypervisor level, you can configure for a higher level of performance. Now, of course, we always recommend having antivirus in guest. You still have file-based access that you need to look for malware in, and sometimes files get emailed in or out or produced. And so having access to the files from an anti-malware perspective is very valuable. But you may need to cut down some of the scanning functionality and be able to meet much higher performance objectives. So for the business, it gives you higher security, it gives you better performance, and the assurance that you're covered no matter what's happening in the guest.
Now, Harish, it sounds like this ability to gain introspection into that hypervisor, while wonderful for security and in doing it in such a way that it doesn't degrade performance, seems to me that there's also perhaps some ancillary benefits here in addition to security when you have that ability to introspect and act. Is there something, and I know this could be perhaps leading into the future discussion, but I'm just interested about establishing the fact that this is not just a security benefit. It could go quite a bit further.
That's true. The ability to introspect into memory has huge potential in the market. First of all, we are addressing with this solution right now the ability to detect advanced attacks, right, which is a very big problem in the industry, where you have everything from nation-sponsored attacks to deep dark web, malicious components, attack components available to common citizens that they can do bad things with. So the ability to reduce that window to advanced attack detection is huge. But now with the power of introspection, we also have the ability to inject on the fly an additional solutions, tools into the virtual machine that may do deep forensics or measure network operations. There are many other things you can do with the ability to introspect that I think the technology can expand to cover. So I think the future is bright for where we can take this between our companies.
Kurt, anything more to add on the potential for this memory inspection capability?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things to add from the potential perspective, one of which is taking a look at the technologies and just rolling back through a lot of the exploits that we've seen even throughout the last 3 months. There have been exploits against Microsoft Windows, exploits against Internet Explorer and Edge hypervisors. There's been, Eternal Blue and the SMB exploits. You can go back and be able to try these out against the solution and be able to see exactly how it would catch them and what would have happened to your system had those exploits actually taken effect. And so if you have a team that is going through and doing forensics and trying to go through and determine whether systems had previously been exploited, you're giving that team now additional functionality to be able to look back and see exactly how the exploits would have worked and better understand how things would have happened within their environment. Because you're doing that outside of the guest, you have a lot of visibility and a lot of information you otherwise wouldn't have. So, one big expanded use case here is to get the capability for HVI between Citrix and BitDefender in the hands of your security teams, in the hands of your forensics teams, and in the hands of your auditors so that they can see exactly what this tool brings to the table. Something else that you want to look at as well is a use case that allows users to expand what they're doing and makes their lives easier, and that's secured browsing. Today, when people go out and browse the internet or hit a popular application like Facebook or Outlook Web Access, or if you've got an administrator that's hitting an administrative console for your DNS environment, your routers, your Cisco, Microsoft environments, etc., oftentimes they're doing that via a web browser. Well, if that's the same web browser that they use to do everything else on their PC, it's over-configured, it's presenting excessive risk, and you've got the opportunity with this solution to publish browsers that are very specific to use. So publish one very specifically for administrative access and know that you've got advanced malware detection. So even if somebody is trying to target your administrators, you're able to thwart their ability to get in and take over the environments that the administrators are accessing. As more things move to the browser and more very sensitive and critical applications move to the cloud, it's extremely important to set up secured browsing, and we strongly recommend doing this with Zen server and hypervisor introspection along with BitDefender providing for security.
The problem in the market with respect to the human who's sitting in front of the browser being the weakest link in the chain is a very important one, and one that many different technology approaches have been taken to address, and most of them have struggled to make it work. I think the value of ZenApp coming in with its secure browser model where you can stream your browser and you're just rendering an interface on the client device, but the browser is actually running in the back end, in the data center, running on Zen server, protected by hypervisor introspection from BitDefender, I think allows you to not just shift the threat away from the client device, but also kill it completely, because that exploit, which would have previously run on the client device, is not on the client device anymore. It's not even on the server anymore because HVI would have caught it and stopped it.
Yeah, and I bring up the browser as an example because when you think of the lowly browser today, it is the interface to some of your most critical applications. And that browser at the same time is also connected to your file system, your network, your Windows registry, your certificate chains and keys. It's basically connected to everything you do and everything you have access to in most operating systems. What we're talking about here is publishing a browser that is very specific to purpose and configured for an individual application. You just put an icon out there, users click on it, and everything works for them silently in the background. By being able to redirect links over to this joint Zen Server BitDefender solution, you're not only protecting against known applications and things that you would utilize, but you can also redirect arbitrary links over. So even if you tell people don't click on any links, you know every once in a while it's going to happen. And when that one person clicks on the link and takes down the entire network, that's awful. Ransomware attacks happen like that all the time. With this solution, that arbitrary link would be redirected over to a one-time use browser. BitDefender would come up and say, hey, yep, there's definitely a problem here. We're going to shut this down. And the attacker never had a chance to get anywhere. And the organization is notified to be able to take additional remediative actions. So it's a great opportunity to really change how people are working and take this arbitrary link problem and ransomware problem and neuter it.
Yeah, it really sounds revolutionary rather than evolutionary when it comes to security. It's quite impressive. I've learned a lot in just the last week or two in looking into this. Harish, you mentioned earlier that before the general availability being announced in May for BitDefender hypervisor introspection on Zen Server, that you'd had this in beta and that you'd work with some customers. Do you have any results from that? Can you offer any metrics of what happened in the real world when people deploy this? Are the results as revolutionary as it sounds like the technology enables?
Yes. And yes, absolutely. So the product was first in beta and then released in controlled availability mode. So the product is actually in production deployment at several companies, both between North America and Europe. We've got a few financial services companies. We've got some hospitals. There's one in Western Europe. There's another one in the U.S. coming up on it now. So we've put the product to use in production deployments, and we've got VDI deployments happening here where the customer's running Zen App, Zen Desktop on top of Zen Server with BitDefender hypervisor introspection. Also got server workloads run just straight on Zen Server too, and these are typical application workloads that either the financial services firms or the hospitals need to run. Product has been in running there for now a couple of months. We've had some great feedback from them. Some of them have become references as well. So we'll be talking more about it at Synergy. Stay tuned on that. But on the whole, we're very excited about the fact that the product is able to provide value in the real world.
I'd also like to add that we've got a very detailed white paper on how to set up the secured browsing solution, the joint solution between Citrix and BitDefender. And even if you're running other hypervisors in your environment, I'd recommend that you set up this solution and try redirecting some arbitrary links over to it, see what value you're going to get in your organization. It's really straightforward to set up and provides a considerable amount of additional security visibility. BitDefender also has some really amazing videos to show just exactly how the solution can block some of the more popular exploits from this year. They're really impressive to watch.
Kurt, we're about out of time, but I was curious, where's the low-lying fruit? Harish mentioned government, VDI, healthcare. Is it the usual suspects with compliance issues hanging over their heads that are the low-lying fruit, the sweet spot for this, or did I maybe miss somebody? Is there other organizations that would be ripe to enjoy the benefits of this sooner rather than later?
Yeah, I would say compliance environments and anybody with regulatory requirements would very much be low-lying fruit for this. But anybody who has sensitive applications or very sensitive use cases, oftentimes we hear things like outsourcing as being one of the more sensitive use cases because you've got external third parties who are getting in and either developing code for you, administering part of the operating environment or otherwise. We've also seen a pretty big uptick in terms of people being interested in this for administering the cloud. As you move up to cloud environments, and you're defining new operating environments up in the cloud, putting new applications up in the cloud, you need to make sure that your administrative model is protected. Oftentimes you're using a browser to directly provide all of the security interfaces for the cloud. And by publishing that browser and putting this solution in front of it, you can make sure that malware is not interrupting your ability to securely administer the cloud environment.
All right, last question to you, Harish. What should organizations do to get ready for this? I hope we've enticed their interest in learning more about it. For those organizations that might want to take a few steps further to actually deploy, what do you need to think about in order to be in the best position to do that? I'm thinking maybe that the virtualization people and the operating folks in technology might need to be thinking more about security, and that the security people might be needing to think more about virtualization. Is there a cultural prep step that one might want to consider as they evaluate this interesting technology?
Yep, I think those fields are starting to come together. I think we'll start to see more people with titles like SecDevOps happen as the need to think about secure virtualization a way of life within organizational behavior. The far as more specifically around hypervisor introspection and how organizations that are worried about two things, either about advanced attacks that could enter their data center and potentially result in a very, very dangerous breach and loss of confidential IP. If you're worried about that, if you're worried about ransomware because an end user sitting in front of a client browser is potentially putting you at risk, in any of those cases, you'd want to think about a technology like hypervisor introspection. And the first step for that is, talk to us. There's a lot of information on the BitDefender website as well as on Citrix's website about this. We will be doing sessions on this at Synergy, so if you will be at Citrix Synergy in Orlando in a few weeks, please come to that. We'd love to be able to, we can demo this solution, we can explain how it works, and we can go from there.
All right, well, very good. I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there. You've been listening to a sponsored BriefingsDirect discussion that examines the relationship between security and virtualization. And we've learned how adaptive companies are finding new ways to leverage their virtualization environments to become more resilient, more intelligent, and be proactive in how they can thwart threats by perhaps putting in distinct browsers for specific uses and reduce their exposure as a result. So, please join me now in thanking our guests. We've been here with Kurt Romer, the Chief Security Strategist at Citrix. Thank you, Kurt.
Thank you, Dana. And thanks, Harish.
We've been here with Harish Agustia. He's also he's the Vice President for Enterprise Solutions at BitDefender. Thank you, Harish.
Thanks, Kurt.
I'm Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at Inter Arbor Solutions, your host and moderator for this ongoing series of BriefingsDirect discussions. I want to also thank our sponsor, BitDefender, for supporting these presentations, and, of course, a big thank you as well to our audience. Please come back next time. Thank you.